All right, everyone. So what we're going to be learning today is we're going to be reviewing from IM1 about triangle congruency. So on your notes, there's 4 triangle congruencies, and I'm going to go over these. The first one is side, side, side. Now remember, with triangle congruency, this just shows that two triangles are 100% identical. That's what congruency means, is that they are identical. So before we go over the 4 concepts, actually, I want to go over real quick. Let's say we have, let's say here's 2 triangles. And let's say this is 3, 5, and 4. 3, let's just do 2, 3, 2. Nope, it can't be. Let's say 3, 3, and 5. All right, so we know that these 2 triangles are congruent. They are completely identical. Because, look, this is congruent to this. This side's the same as this side. So, side, I'm sorry, not side. Let's just say this is S, B, C, and this is A, B, D. These are the names of the vertice angles, or the vertex angles. So if I were to state a triangle congruent, I have to say it in the exact same order. Meaning, let's say triangle SBC is congruent to triangle ABD. I have to say it in this exact same order. I can't just choose 3 random points and say they're congruent to 3 other random points on here. The reason why is this. If I just look at this congruence statement and I say BC is the exact same as BD. Well, let's look. BC is the same as BD. They're both 3 and 3. Let's say SC has to be the exact same line segment as it has to go in the same order of AD. SC, which is 5, and AD, which is also 5. They have to be lined up identically in order for you to provide a correct congruent statement. The reason why that's important is because when you are labeling triangles congruent, and I'm not going to really go over this too much other than telling you, you have to label the vertex angles the corresponding vertex angles congruent as well. Okay, so let's go over. The very first one is side, side, side. That says, if I have, this is review from IM1. If I have, let's say this side's congruent to this side's congruent to this, and this side's congruent to this. These 2 triangles are said to be congruent because of side, side, side congruency. What is this side and this side? What's the numerical value of these 2 line segments? I have absolutely no idea. But all I know is that if I'm given 2 tick marks and 2 tick marks, and these 2 are identical, they are exactly the same. So on your notes, I also talk about a square. And I say, if you have a square with a diagonal, are these 2 triangles congruent? They are totally congruent. Because, look, in a square, every side's exactly the same. And this is actually the same side, because if I were to take these and pull these apart, notice this is the exact same side. Because if I shove it together, I get my square. And if I take my square and I pull it apart, I have the exact same diagonal side. So that's why there's 2 tick marks on here. So these would be, all of these are the same. Side, side, side would show that these are congruent. Remember, side, 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 you can just prove that, or if you can prove that 3 sides of one triangle are identical to 3 sides of another, they are congruent. Let's take something like this. Let's say I'm given information like this. And I'm told that this side is congruent to this side. That's all I'm told. Or let's say like this. And that's all I know. And I ask you, are these 2 triangles congruent just based off of this information alone? The answer is no. But instead of saying no with triangle congruency, we label it as CBD, cannot be determined. That's what CBD. So we don't say no, they're not congruent. We just say, I don't know, maybe, but we don't have enough information to show that they're congruent yet. Now, in the directions, it's going to ask you to state the triangles if they're congruent or not, and then write out how you know that they're congruent. All I want you to do is use one of the 4 conjectures that we're going to be reviewing today. You do not need to go any further, and if you look at the answers to the questions that I gave you, I just list stuff like this. I don't write out sentences. The book wants you to write out sentences about why they're congruent. I don't want any of that. I just want you to keep it real simple and list one of the 4 conjectures if they are congruent. Okay, the next triangle conjecture that I give you is side, angle, side. And I say 2 congruent sides with an included angle. What included means is in between. This is an example of two triangles being congruent with side, angle, side. How do I know that they're congruent with side, angle, side? Because look, where these two congruent lines meet, boom, there's an angle in between here, and where these 2 lines meet, there's an included angle in between the 2 sides. Included means in between. Side, angle, side means that you have an angle where the 2 sides meet. They have to go in the exact same order. Now, what if I were to say this? What if I were to say this angle is congruent to this angle, and these 2 sides are congruent, these 2 corresponding sides are congruent? Would these triangles be congruent? You can't say side, angle, side. Even though this has 2 sides where they meet, there's an included angle. This angle is not in between. So would you say yes, they're congruent? Hopefully you would say no, but you cannot say no. You have to say cannot be determined. CBD. Every time you want to write no, they're not congruent, you need to write CBD, and that's it. 2 more conjectures. The next one is ASA. Angle with a side in between. So I give you an example and I say this. And I list that this is congruent to this is congruent to this, and I say, are these 2 triangles congruent in your notes that you should have in front of you? The answer is maybe. I don't know. I'd say right off the bat, no, because I only have 2 congruent parts here and 2 congruent parts. And with these 3 conjectures so far, I need at least 1, 2, 3 congruent parts to see if they're congruent or not. But you can tell right off the bat that this is a vertical angle and this is a vertical angle. And if you remember from last chapter, all vertical angles are congruent. So notice how you have on one line, you have 2 angles with an included side, which means the side that's in between. And on this one, you have the same exact 2 angles that are congruent here and here on this line with an included angle. So angle, side, angle would make them congruent. Next, I give you another triangle. And I say B is the midpoint of AC. And the question is, are they congruent? You can't say yes right now because you need 3 things to show that they're congruent. I only have 1 corresponding part. I need 3 corresponding parts. I also know, though, remember vertical angles? But I still don't have enough information. The reason why I tell you B is the midpoint of AC is because if this is the middle line segment, or the middle point of this line segment, that means that this side and this side are congruent. This side is identical to this side. It cuts it in half. Therefore, angle, side, angle. Angle, side, angle. So if it gives you a question like this in the homework and it doesn't give you this information, that vertical angles are congruent and these two are congruent, it just says B is the midpoint. Are these two triangles congruent? It wants you to fill in other parts that are also congruent. Therefore, you could say angle, side, angle makes them congruent after you fill it in. The last one is angle, angle, side. So with angle, angle, side, AAS, what this means is if you have a triangle, in the notes I say something like this. Let's say you have a triangle like this. Notice how angle, angle, and the side is not in between the two angles. Angle, angle, and the side is not in between. Two angles that are congruent to the other two angles in the other triangle with a side that's not in between. This makes these two triangles congruent, and if it says state your reason why, all you have to state is one of these four conjectures: angle, angle, side. So these two are congruent because of angle, angle, side. But in the second one I gave you something like this. And I say, you have two angles with a non-included side, meaning a side that's not in between the two angles. And two angles with an included side, meaning a side that's in between the two angles. Are these two triangles congruent? I don't know. Maybe. I know that this is set up as angle, angle, side. Angle, angle, side. This is set up as angle, side, angle. Angle, side, angle. I don't know if this side's the same as this. I don't know if this side's the same as this. But I just know, based off of the information that I'm given, and there's nothing else I can figure out, I would have to say, as of right now, cannot be determined is a justified statement to say that these two triangles, they might be congruent, but I just cannot determine that information. Okay, you have your assignment listed below the notes, and your answers to the notes are on the very last page of the attached work.